Right. Oh, it's a bit echoey.
Can we take them down?
Yeah, do you want to start? It starts, yes. I'm getting sort of hand signals from the back there. I'm not sure what they mean. But can I welcome you all to this first meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee of 2023 and start by wishing you all a happy new year and trust you had a pleasant and enjoyable Christmas. First item, the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November. Those of you that were here, can I have your approval to sign them as a correct record? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Councillor Perdue-Horan, is there a mistake?
Not well. I don't think so, or maybe I don't. Can I ask, Mr. Chairman? You expressed dissatisfaction with some of the ombudsman reports last month, if I recall, and you said it was your intention to seek a meeting with the ombudsman. Do you have any update to pass on to us?
This, with respect, Councillor Perdue-Horan, this is the minutes of the meeting, whether or not they are accurate, and not a discussion of what went on at, or an update on what happened at the last meeting. So I'm asking, are these minutes an accurate record? And I think I got a show to indicate that they were. So I'm accepting them and will sign them at the end of the meeting.
Can I come back then, Mr. Chairman?
We've got an item on the agenda, if you're patient, which says update on local government and social care ombudsman's decisions.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Do any members or officers have any interest to declare under this item? Nope.
Apologies, go back.
Oh, I do. Apologies. I've missed apologies. My mistake. Thank you very much for pointing that out to me. Item number 2, getting ahead of myself. Apologies for absence. Now, we've received apologies from Councillor Michael Payne for other reasons, and Councillor Pringle is substituting. Welcome, Mike, to you. Councillor Andy Meakin, medical illness, and we've got Councillor Perdue-Horan substituting, and we've got apologies from Councillor Nigel Turner, other reasons, and Councillor Jonathan Wheeler is substituting. So are you happy to accept those? Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Creamer. Okay, we haven't got those listed, but thank you for drawing that to our attention, and that will be noted in the minutes. Thank you very much. I'm so used to seeing you sat there, Councillor Creamer, I hadn't realised that you weren't the full member of this committee, but sub. I wouldn't go as far as super. Come on, Councillor Pringle, get real. Yeah. Okay. Can I now move on then to update on the local government and social care ombudsman's decisions? You've got the report in front of you. There is a recommendation on page 9, which I will move.
Chairman, I second as well.
Thank you. I wasn't proposing to spend any time on the decisions where no fault was found, unless members wish particularly to raise an issue on that. But I was going to go really straight to page 15, which is the complaint about Mrs. X complaining about Mr. Y's needs assessment and mental capacity assessment. You've got that report in front of you, and there, I don't know whether, Sue, you want to say anything on this before I throw it open. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of comments. So the crux of this was that Mrs. X was concerned that Mr. Y was provided with too much home care and then was charged for it. And what the Ombudsman found was they looked at the mental capacity decision about his ability to manage his finance, and they had no fault with how the work was done, but it wasn't properly recorded and shared, which was what they found as a problem. And then also the care and support assessment did not provide a clear rationale for the number of carers and hours that they were doing. So that's the crux of the fault. We have implemented all the recommendations. We've reimbursed the money, and we also, when looking into this, discovered that this was an agency worker working for us. Now we already have a comprehensive programme of training around the Mental Capacity Act. So we've strengthened it to make sure that any agency workers who start to work for us also are doing that training as part of their induction. So that's positive. I also think that this is one that we could potentially have resolved without it needing to go to the Ombudsman, because we could have seen for ourselves that things were not recorded properly and sought to resolve that. So working with Richard on how we build a stage in to try and resolve any that remain unresolved at the second stage, more similar to the process that Children's have.
Well, that's certainly good to know, and I think it's fair to say that you'd already reimbursed the extra the costs that, on reflection, you felt were unfairly charged before the ombudsman came to that decision. In reality, the agreed action doesn't say a little. Just before I call in Councillor Lee, there is one agreed action where it says sample 20 care and support plans with at least 5 by social worker A and check for accuracy and evidence. I would have thought that was normal management oversight anyway, that you would be doing that.
We are implementing a fully revised quality assurance framework that's reviewing all that to make sure that we have proportionate amount of work looked at across all staff. So that's something that we've got in training. We wouldn't normally sample in that audit way that many assessments. So that work is underway for the individual and the team, but we're also reviewing our quality assurance practice framework as a department, so we'll be very consistent with how we sample work across assessments, reviews.
I have to say, I would have thought sampling was an important management tool to ensure standardisation, as you say. So I think that's something you need to carefully.
It is in place. It's the
Good.
consistency of it that
Good.
we're
Good. Councillor Lee, you wanted to say something.
Chairman, thank you. I think it's unfair to state that it was agency staff. End of the day is we've dealt with these before where it's been our own staff. So I think that's unfair. I would also like to state that I'm hoping that due to this being historical, and we have spoken for this at length about recording, that this is something that we've already looked at and resolved, and this is just because it's historically so far behind. We're playing catch up to a certain extent. So I'm hoping that everything that we've spoke about in the past meeting will resolve this going forward. But it's just very frustrating that we are going to be getting some of these through because we haven't logged properly, or we've been deemed of not logging properly. So hopefully that will be resolved, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, we've been given those assurances, and I think we can see from what we've got here in front of us on this one, a lot of it was already sorted. Councillor Pringle.
Thanks, Jim. I think it's important as well that we recognise that scrutiny or questioning of anything that's raised is not a negative, is to move forward as a positive. And I'm picking this out, sir. I think you've answered most of what I've written down to this one. But how would I know, because it says here basically that we did some things right, but we did some things wrong? How would I know what we did wrong and how are we going to improve them in the future? Is that part of the implementation of the process that you're putting in place? And would we get a report back at any point? Or am I asking for something not to need to come back because it's in hand and is captivated at the high level with you, sir?
So in terms of all the actions we do with Richard's teams, the reports back to the Ombudsman, And I would say 100% of those times we are just saying everything's been implemented. As I've set out, we're implementing these actions, but we're doing over and above. So we have got our quality assurance framework and our method for sampling, but we're reviewing all of that to make sure it's as good as it can possibly be as we go forward. And our principal social workers doing that. So that's something we've not been asked to do by the Ombudsman, but we're doing it anyway. So and all the recommendations are underway. I think it is relevant to mention the fact that it is an agency worker simply because we've had a really robust training programme underway, as has been mentioned, around mental capacity for some time. But obviously, at the moment, given the pressures on the workforce, we are having more agency workers coming in at very short notice to make sure that some of our services are staffed when we've got sickness, etc., hitting, be it flu, COVID, or whatever. And that's been happening since the time of this incident, and it continues to be a factor. So the reason that that's important is that we've picked up that and are making sure that even if we're bringing in agency staff to make sure services are safe very rapidly, that agency staff are also we're getting them linked into all that training that any of our other staff would have as soon as possible. So again, it's another action that we've picked up.
Thank you. Are you happy with that? One thing that was also flagged up in the Ombudsman's report, and one or two members have mentioned this to me, is the fact that the complainant said that they had been contacted by social worker A on a withheld number. I don't know how they knew it was social worker A if they didn't answer the phone on a withheld number, but that's another story. Is it sensible to withhold numbers? Because if a social worker needs to get in touch with somebody for whatever reason, and they don't happen to get to the phone, they don't pick it up, they could, if they knew the number, ring straight back. Is that something to be looked at or not?
Yes, I think it is. I've started looking at it, and from what I've had back so far, a lot of our telephony systems do automatically withhold numbers. So it is something that we can look at with resources as to why that is happening, and how we can remedy it.
Because it seems that all telephone calls that come from County Hall are withheld, and it infuriates me when I see a withheld number and they go, it's County Hall, but who in County Hall wants to get hold of me? I don't know. So if that's in hand, I think that would be a positive step. And perhaps other officers can take that on board and drive something through. Thank you. Any more comments or questions on this particular case? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, actually, I was going to make the very same point. It is, I think, it's more of a corporate thing about this phone number issue. It's something that's mystified me for quite a long time. So this could be an opportunity for some sort of look at the phone systems, because I know that as you've said, if you receive an unidentified phone number, it's a bit annoying. But for some of our residents, especially people who need who could be vulnerable, it could be a problem. So if this is an opportunity to perhaps look at the system, so to speak, and I realise we're getting off subject a bit here, but this could be one of those opportunities or moments that highlights a potential weakness of the outgoing phone system.
Well, thank you for that. That has been noted. We're not getting off the subject. It formed, in my view, a significant part of the Ombudsman's report, and that's what we're here to comment on and to drive through improvements. Are there any other comments or questions on that particular report? No. Right. The next one is Mrs. M complains about the payment she received to transport her daughter to school. This was a system that I introduced when I was in charge of Children and Young People Services, along with Sue Saddington, and it increased flexibility. And at first sight, it appears that we were perhaps seriously at fault. Although I find it hard to believe that this one person didn't know about the changes, because they would have been widely circulated at the time. But I think there was some issue with the use of the payments. Is somebody going to pick us to tell us about that? I don't see anybody from Children's here, which is a little disappointing. In fact, it's a lot disappointing. Perhaps you can take that message back.
Yeah, they were advised, Mr. Chair, to be here. I think, is it Chris Ward? Yeah, Chris Ward. Yeah, unless are they on Teams? No. No.
Is any other officer able to fill us in on the detail on this?
I don't know the complexities of the
No,
legislation.
it was the reason that this was challenged by the county council was because it was felt that there had been an inappropriate use of the money that had been allocated anyway, so that to be allocating more would not be the best use of council money. But I think what we need to do is to bring this one back to the next meeting when I want a senior officer from Children's to be here to give us background information on this one. Are you, Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I suggest as well? It might be because it's to do with transport and funding of transport. It might be more as well as someone from children CYP, someone from place in to do with the transport side of the bus operating.
Thank you for that. That's helpful.
I suspect they're more involved than the children.
Well, perhaps I don't. I wouldn't say that, but I think you're right to cover all eventualities. Are you content that we do that? I'm not best pleased about that, I can tell you. The next one, Miss B's kitchen. Well, this one I find beggars belief. We have been found at fault for not considering carefully enough whether or not we use powers that we don't have. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely agree with you on this. I've been reading through this one and it absolutely baffles me. They've found fault in the fact that the council didn't think about doing something that we couldn't do, and that they've even said, even if the council had thought about doing it, we wouldn't have done it. So how can they find us at fault when we're not at fault? It absolutely baffles me. It's bizarre. I don't understand it in any way.
Well, this will be a classic example of what we shall take up with the Ombudsman when the meeting has been arranged, which I hope is going to come in the not too distant future. This was a property owned by Gedling Homes. We weren't the landlord, and because adaptations were needed that cost more than a certain sum of money, which could be funded through the district council, the county council then has to make up the difference. Just as I've said before, demonstrates the absurdity of the two-tier system. But I won't go down that pathway. I've thought that for 40 years, but we won't explore that any further. We were simply obliged to pay the extra money. And it was Gedling Homes. We can't go into Gedling Homes properties and sort that out. Councillor Creamer, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to point out exactly what you're saying, because as a twin from Gedling as well, it's not our responsibility as a county council. It's Gedling's, as you quite rightly say. And Gedling Homes is a standalone. It's not even Gedling Homes anymore. It's Jigsaw Homes now.
Right.
So as an update, if you want, it's Jigsaw Homes, but it does belly believe that we haven't got powers and we get slagged off for not using the powers we haven't got. It is very strange. I think the point is that Ombudsman may actually be more used to unitary authorities rather than actual districts and counties.
Ooh, wash your mouth out. Unitary authorities. Dear, oh dear. Councillor Pringle.
What? I'm lost for words. That's what I'm trying to say. Because, right, the practicality of what has been written embarrasses the author of what's been written. It's quite pathetic to see it in this situation. And 21st century, really? Chairman, you need to get hold of this. You don't need to have a word with somebody. You need to be really slamming the desk on this, because this is a complete and total waste of time and energy. And if we can't organise between ourselves what should be done, what shouldn't be done, best for our residents, then we're completely failed.
Councillor.
Chairman, I absolutely echo what Councillor Pringle says. I mean, I've been in the building trade for all my life, and this is unbelievable. I hope it's a one-off. I really do, because, you know, when you read the detail, an oven came or two ovens came, and the sink splashes because somebody says, "Oh, we'll reduce the water pressure to try and stop the water splashing in the sink." I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. And it goes on for months and weeks, and everything. There's nobody seemingly in charge of the project. It needs somebody to take a grip on it and be in charge. And I don't see any evidence that that's the case. And it's embarrassing. It really is. And I hope it's a one-off. But I want reassurance. I think, as you do, that this is a one-off and that it's not happening anywhere else. And that's what concerns me. Thank you.
We did not have the responsibility for it. We were just the fund holders passing over the money. It was Gedling Homes, or whatever they're called now. It was their responsibility as landlord to ensure that all the work was done. Now, we can pass on, and I'm sure Councillor Creamer will pass on, the concerns that have been raised by this, but it should have been Gedling Homes that the complaint was raised against. But I think you'll see in the report the Ombudsman doesn't have any powers to investigate that particular aspect because, like us, they don't have the power. So should we criticise them for not using the powers that they don't have, as they've criticised us for not using the powers we don't have? So that is as much as I think we can do, is to ensure that message gets back to Gedling Homes about what should have happened. Anything further on that one? No? Good. Then the last one. The council is failing to determine definitive map modifications applications in a timely way. Now, again, I am not happy with this report. We know that a lot of definitive footpath modifications have been put forward as a result of the cap, the time frame that was imposed a while ago. All that I understand has now been removed. And we've all got, I'm sure, footpaths in our divisions that we want making as definitive footpaths. And you'll see from the report that the department, Councillor Butler's committee, have got what I think is a very sensible protocol for prioritising those applications. I do not see why the Ramblers Association should get priority over elected members and any other member of the public who wants to have a footpath defined and made into a definitive footpath. So I don't accept that we were at fault. The Planning Inspectorate have issued directives, and I'll stand to be corrected on this, but I don't think they have any statutory force at all behind them. So they can tell us that we should get these dealt with in a certain amount of time. I only wish they would apply the same argument to their own decisions that they have to make, because there's no one worse for being long-winded and delaying than the Planning Inspectorate. And I don't see that it's the Ombudsman's role to tell us how many officers we should appoint as a county council. That's our decision. I don't see it's the Ombudsman's role to say who Councillor Butler should or should not meet. Quite frankly, it's up to him. Mr. Lewis, is there anything you want to say on this before I ask Councillor Butler to regale us with the story of his meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it is a difficult one. We've been inundated with applications, particularly from Mr. C, over a very short period of time. So we do have a caseload, as do other authorities throughout England and Wales, and it's quite a known thing nationally. However, we have employed an extra officer in the last year or so. We have somebody who retired last year. We've managed to recruit to an experienced officer since, and we are looking at technology to help with the admin process, because there's a lot of administration involved in dealing with these legal orders. So we are looking at this. It's a shame, though, that when this legislation was first introduced, which was back in 2000 and then again in 2015, with the Deregulation Act, that the authority and other authorities throughout England and Wales didn't receive any extra funding, of course, for this. And it's now been scrapped. But of course, despite it being scrapped, we still have a legal duty to process these applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, do you want to tell us about your meeting?
Yes, I won't go into too much detail, but I did meet with Mr. C just before Christmas, along with Neil Lewis. We met, and it was a perfectly amiable meeting and discussion. But there's no doubt about it that Mr. C takes his position and interest very seriously, and has submitted a lot of applications for map changes, and as you will have heard, and when you're dealing with third parties, landowners, and also a lot of history as well, because some of the claims are going back to paths that haven't been used for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And so by the very nature of that, a lot of research has to be carried out. It's a very complex job, and as Neil has said, that there are pressures, as we all know, on for the usual reasons on the department, and we explained this to Mr. C. But also on a positive note as well, we did explain as well how we're changing procedures a little bit in general to try and make things overall more efficient. We also discussed some new computer software that's just coming in that hopefully will speed process up. The meeting lasted, I think, perhaps just over an hour from memory, and my conclusion is that Mr. C departed. He probably wasn't completely happy, because at the end of the day he is very keen to get these map orders made, but I think there was a better understanding as to the challenges that we face as an authority. It's not necessarily a case of us, well, it's not a case of us not wanting to cooperate, but you've got to be pragmatic and realistic, and I think the team is doing the best it can in what is very complex and at times very challenging situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Saddington, then Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. What seems many years ago, I was a member of the Rights of Way Committee, and I have to say, one needed a degree nearly to get your head around it, because it was so complicated. And to be fair, I attend somewhere around 23 parish councils, and always there's an issue somewhere about a public footpath, be it blocked or the person who owns the land won't allow people to walk across. It's absolutely endless, and that's when you realise that there's a huge amount of legislation that Neil and his officers have to get their head around. I don't expect any of my issues, although to my residents they're extremely important, but I don't expect to be put to the top of the list to have it sorted. I know that there are legalities, as Richard has just alluded to, with the landowners who have to give up land, etc., etc. And I think we just all have to be patient, realise that it's a highly legal committee, and we just have to sit back and wait. Nobody should be prioritised, however much they think they are important. So are our residents important that we represent, and we all have to take a position in the queue and wait until it's sorted. And I thank Neil, because whenever I ring him for any reason, he's always extremely helpful, as are his officers. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Councillor Saddington. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I keep reading the first line on next to 40. In order to provide remedy for this injustice, really injustice, with what's going on in the world, they're classing this as an injustice. It's ridiculous reading. Again, I don't understand how they've come to the decision that they've come to, especially when we know that a few months ago we were advising, from the district council perspective, we were providing that there was a year backlog in their own departments. So it's absolute belief that they're able to put this in a report to us. One thing that I was always taught by my grandma is you don't throw stones in glass houses, and that's exactly what they've done. So I think I might be raising complaints to them, asking why they're taking so long with their own decisions. Chairman, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comment or question on that particular report? Well, that concludes the reports. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you to officers. Sorry, yes?
You said I could raise my earlier point in this item.
Yeah, I thought I'd answered it, but go on.
Sorry, I must have missed the update.
I updated you. I said we have not yet fixed the meeting, which we said we were going to. Don't forget, it's been a relatively short period of time between the last meeting and this meeting, and we've had Christmas in between. A meeting will hopefully be arranged in the not too distant future between myself, Councillor Lee, relevant officers, and the Ombudsman. I thought that was the question you asked, if I've misunderstood.
Thank you. Yes, you made quite an issue of it at the last meeting.
Yes.
Your unhappiness. Can I ask, did you reconsider whether you would have a less partisan approach, or perhaps the perception of a partisan approach, by inviting, let's say, 2 other councillors from this committee from other parties?
I'm more than happy to consider it, but I think the conclusion I shall come to will be the one that I came to last time. It is normal practice for the members of the controlling group to meet with outside bodies, just as Councillor Butler met with Mr. C, was it? That's the way things are done. So you've got your update now. Right. Item number 6. Internal Audit Charter Refresh. You've got the internal audit charter there on the yellow pages. Recommendation on page 42 that the charter be approved, which I move.
Chairman, second.
Any comments or questions? No. Councillor Pringle, did you indicate? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Sorry, and forgive me. This is just a point for my clarification. I was unaware as to exactly what the minor changes were, but see that we've moved from bullet points to arrow points on some of them, on 7.2, 9.2, 11.3 and 12.4. Are they the minor changes?
Mr. Lacey, do you want to?
Yes, indeed. That's been purely a cosmetic, and the main change is to remove Rob Disney's title and insert my own title of being the interim Chief Internal Auditor. That's the new title. That's purely changed. There's been no legal change to the document at all.
I commend you for spotting that, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. I do read the report.
With that detail, are we all happy to accept the recommendation? All those in favour? Anyone against? No, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Counter Fraud Progress Report, which is an update. You've got that report in front of you. And we've got one recommendation on page 58 to note the contents of the report, which I move.
Chairman, second.
Any comments or questions on this? Councillor Pringle.
Thanks, Chairman. I've just got 3 questions, please. Table 1, potential error table. I'm not sure what potential error breakdown is of the report, and whether or not it's partners' issues or failures or our own failures. Is that something that is...
Sorry, can you just say where are you?
Yeah, in table 1 on page 1, page 53 of 68. Table 1.
Right.
I just couldn't see... I couldn't determine the error breakdown within the report. And are the errors all our errors, or are the partners' errors? Or I wasn't sure I could scrutinise the figures that were in front of us. Question paragraph 12 under the fighting fraud and corruption locally. I was just wondering, where are we with this? If there's any further update with this. And then I see that on page 57, Counter Fraud Action Plan progress. The Business Service Centre to work with internal audit. That's got a report back in in September 23. Are we expected to have an update prior to 23, or we're waiting for the 9 months till September for any report? Thank you, Chairman.
Who would like to pick up those? Mr. Lacey, go for it.
Yeah, just I start with the first one. I think you're referring to the header table cross. In the NFI, they're either, when they do their matches and how the data is matched, they either describe them as being potential fraud, so we can investigate the fraud angle, or / error. So there could be an error in the actual data set that's provided. So you won't find a correlation in the table below. That's just terminology that the NFI department use when they send out the data sets for us to look at. So it's actually informing us there could be a fraud, or it could actually be a simple error. So there isn't then in the subsequent table an amount due to fraud and an amount due to error, because we can't distinguish between the two. That makes sense. Okay.
That's difficult to scrutinise at any point if we can't distinguish between one and the other.
Well,
so
what we try and do then is provide in that table there whether there's actually been a fraud issue, because the ones that could be in error are the masses. In the original data set, there could be something like 18,000 matches. We couldn't go through each one that was a potential error, pick out. The table by exception brings out those that have been identified as potential fraud.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Your second one, was it paragraph 12?
Well, yeah.
So at the moment, I don't know when the next strategy from CFAS will be actually reviewed. They did stop it during the COVID process, and I can make inquiries. I imagine they look at their strategy like we would, perhaps every 3-4 years. So it may well be that the 2021 may well be refreshed in 2023, or indeed perhaps 24. But I haven't got any intelligence that tells me that they've actually done it or in progress in doing it yet. So that's probably something we can report on in our next progress, which will be our annual report, which will be due probably around about June time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And similarly, quite rightly, in the table that you mentioned, we are working on that. The piece of work that takes the time is to match the data within Excel and using the IDEA software to write the scripts that can be used by the Business Service Centre. But we can give an update as to where we've got again on that in the annual report in sort of June time again. So that would cover those areas.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Any other comments? So Councillor Wheeler, then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want under the action about the proactive work with the travel and transport team in response to the threat of blue badge and concession travel fraud. Just on that as well, can I ask that we add that there's work with the comms team about how we can actually communicate out there about what the potential risks are to people if they aren't, if they are using a blue badge incorrectly, for example, because the telesponse system, which you obviously fit in when a relative passes away, that isn't covered under that, which some people might think it is, because if you don't have the experience that type of thing. Okay, say for an example, myself, when my grandma passed away, it wasn't under there. We knew to send it back just because of our own experience being counsellors, but of course some people might not do that. So just about some work with them to see how we can best go out to people to let them know, because there might be some people are generally using it, but not understanding that they can't, or the exact process. But I know that some people we know who are trying it on, but if we can perhaps go out there and also say the not just the risk but the potential consequences that people misuse it, I think maybe that might stir some people into doing the right thing, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. Nottinghamshire Live have run an article, considerable article on blue badge fraud as a result of this report, and the comments, the feedback comments, usually from people with pseudonyms that because they don't want to put their real names down there, but that's fair enough, are very critical of abuse of blue badges and saying that councils should be doing something about it. Well, I think this report demonstrates we are doing something about it with a number of blue badges that we've actually taken back in. So I think that's positive. But I would say to those people, and this can go out in the message, if you know of people that you think are using a blue badge fraudulently, then let us know. You can even use your pseudonym, because we don't need to know your name, and we'll investigate as far as we can. But I think that's an excellent idea, Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you very much. I've probably mentioned this before, but the reason I got involved in politics was due to a blue badge. If you Google my name, I think it made all the way to the Hong Kong National Times about a blue badge incident with this council. The reason why I got involved in politics, I did lots of research about blue badges at the time, and there is major cases nationally of fraud when it comes to blue badges. I won't go into the details, because I could talk about it for hours. The one thing that I think the council needs to do more is more enforcement, working with district councils, something I've mentioned many times. But the one thing that we need to take in consideration is on more than one occasion, I've been at Waitrose, I don't always shop at Waitrose, but it was Waitrose, where people will ask me if I'm disabled and if I should be parking in blue badge places because I'm young and I've got a blue badge. So we do need to take in consideration that not everybody with a blue badge will look disabled, but the council do need to take action to get rid of these illegal badges that are actually taking away precious car parking spaces from the people that actually need them. Look at Newark in particular, where I represent. We have limited blue badge car parking spaces, and for everybody illegally using them spaces, it's taking away the precious spaces from the people that actually need them. So I do welcome this report. I thank the officers for their work. I think we could go further, but it's great to see that we are saving this council money and National Council's money from taking these blue badges off, because these blue badges do come with benefits that everybody won't be aware of. So thank you very much.
It'd be interesting to know what they do in Hong Kong to deal with blue badge infringement. I dread to think. Councillor Butler, did you indicate that you wanted to
I
speak?
did, Mr. Chairman. About my points have been covered. It was about the blue badges, just to really share colleagues' comments as well, that the sheer frustration and indeed distress that genuine users of badges have is really considerable. And so, because we've all experienced it, haven't we? And either seen it for ourselves or had reports from residents. So this is a very helpful report, and hopefully it can lead to better managing and monitoring of abuse, and also deal with it. So yeah,
Thank you very
more
much.
power to them.
Thank you.
Could I,
Mr. Lacey, yes?
could I just come back on
Of
that?
course
and
you can,
say,
yes.
very good suggestion. We'll pick that up in terms of looking at the comms on that piece of work as well, and just to give reassurance that from our perspective, the best piece we can do as a county council is promote that awareness and then the deterrent. That's what we focus our energy on, and the NFI exercise and the work with the district councils really looks at the enforcement side of things. So from a county council perspective, I try and put my energies into prevent. The districts and the NFI put their energies into detect. So if you think of those fraud angles, etc., that's the classics of prevention and detection. They're covering it from both perspectives, just to give you that assurance.
Two-tier authorities again, yes. Never mind. If no further comments, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, regulation of investigatory powers, the annual report. You can see from the annual report that we haven't requested use of them. We've got a recommendation set out on page 63, which I move.
Chairman, second.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. When was the last? I don't know if anyone knows off the top of the head. When was the last time that we used any RIP powers? Because I know we've done a similar report through our district council last month, and again, it's something that we haven't used for considerable time because there's other legislation that's come through after that's easier and a lot more accessible. I was just wondering if when was the last time we used this, and if not, what other legislation are we using in place of that trumpets RIPA, if that makes sense?
I can't answer the question on when it was last used. Yes.
Yeah, I can assist with that. They were last used in 2021, and that was largely in relation to counterfeit cigarettes and tobacco products and vaping products. I'm not aware of anything that has taken the place of RIPA, so I'd be interested to know what legislation the districts are relying on.
I don't like these new speakers. We're mainly using more, rather than covert surveillance, we're using a lot more overt surveillance a lot of the time, rather than doing things secretly. Now, I know it's a bit more difficult for the county because of the trading standards angle and things like that, but I just did wonder how that, if with your permission, how that worked with regards to trading standards, just because I've had a big issue in my area about it, because it's got to be very difficult to have a camera outside but then see what people are coming out the shops with, if that makes sense. So I'm just wondering how that works.
We would only make an application to use the powers under RIPA if we wanted to carry out covert surveillance. Now, that has to be necessary and proportionate. So prior to that, if there is a way of doing it that's overt, then trading standards would use those methods. So that could be going into a shop with a Notts County Council lanyard on, for example, so you're not kind of pretending to be someone else or whatever, just, making those kinds of inquiries. And that may well be why we haven't made applications this year last year, because they may well have been overt methods in which to gather the data that was needed.
One last really quick question. It's not directly related to RIPA, but it was just in relation to something that Emma said. When you're doing test purchases, I would assume that you're talking about, obviously you don't wear county council IDs. How does test purchases work? Because do we need to, obviously we can't inform them that we're doing it, but
No.
Isn't that classed as some sort of covert surveillance as well?
The guidance suggests that if you make one test purchase, and it's just a general inquiry just to see what's happening, you don't need RIPA authorisation to do that. However, if you think that you were deceived perhaps in that one visit and you think, I want to go back a few more times, maybe see who else is behind the counter, things might be given away, you would then have built up a kind of a profile of what you want to investigate, and at that point, if you wanted to then do something a bit more intrusive and repeat your visit, you would then need to consider whether applying for RIPA authorisation would be appropriate.
Good. Okay, thank you. The report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That is carried. Last item on the agenda is the work programme, which I'm happy to move.
To a second.
Everybody happy with the work programme? Can we have a show of hands? All those in favour? Thank you very much. So I declare the meeting closed at 11:17. Thank you very much.